All right. For people joining this live stream, we are talking about some things to do with the resource system, which powers things like the data repository. And Bob was about to explain what this is.
Right. So we implemented resource search in 11.0 or 11.1, and since then we've had a bunch of other search functions come to the language, and resource search sort of grew out of consistency with them. So this is an overhaul of the design to get it more consistent.
Do we have people here who represent text search?
Well, Sushma is PMing the general effort of consistency.
Okay.
Here.
And Sushma is here.
I'm here.
Yes.
Okay. 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 By the way, Bob, you have a lot of background noise, a lot of whooshing noise. You're very loud. Okay. So do you have examples here? Can we see it run?
Yeah, it takes 12 to run.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm not sure what the best thing to do is about wide dataset outputs in doc pages that get cut off here. Will that look all right in the build?
No idea. Not a question for me. I don't know. I would pick an example that doesn't produce this giant output.
That's the old one. I just left it in there so there wouldn't be empty examples in the build. So we'll remove the 11.3 outputs once we approve this design.
Well, wait a minute. What are the 12.0 outputs?
Everything that's tentative is 12.0. That one single example that's in the middle of your screen right now is.
Oh, I see. Okay, fine. So wait a minute. So the point here is to return not a list of resource objects, but for resource search to return a data set. Is that correct?
Yes, by default. The second argument, you can tell it what you want, and so you can get a list of objects if you prefer that, or a list of metadata associations, or whatever other sort of thing you might want. The property field, which is consistent with web search and web image search.
Okay, that's good.
And the first argument now, instead of just taking a string, takes all the specs from text search. So search query string, exact order, whatever, fixed order, whatever it's called, those things.
Okay, but so to understand, I mean, the back end of this is the same as text search?
Yes. We had it. So basically it'll run two text searches, one locally and one in the resource system backend, and it'll combine the results.
Is it efficient?
If the search index locally already exists, then it's efficient. If it doesn't, it has to build it on demand, and then it's bad.
Okay, that's no good. Right? So why would the local search index not exist? So in other words, that's a case where you've downloaded lots of resources locally. Why are you bothering to search anything locally? How could you possibly have anything locally that you don't have?
If you created it yourself with a definition notebook, for example, and you never submitted
it. So but those are the only ones that you're looking at there, right?
I could do that. I do include the cached versions of what you would have gotten.
Okay, but I think that's a mistake because
I think you're right. You're right. You're right.
Have already been pre-built. So
I think this is the first time I thought about it. You're right.
Okay. So if it does have to reindex, is it going to show a reindexing string too?
It'll be a progress indicator. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So you know what's going on. What is its text for what it says?
Building local search index, I think, something along those lines.
Okay. All right. I mean, this seems like a very straightforward discussion. I think this is all good. My screen is flashing, which might suggest that a version 12 is installing itself. It's a bad sign that my screen is flashing multiple times. Okay. Well, I don't think there's much more to say here. This looks fine. Any other questions?
No. Do you have thoughts on what properties should be accepted? That little table in the middle there has what I have so far. It's just I made that up. I don't know that it's perfect.
Well, what is it for text search? What is it for text search? I mean, that's
I'm looking.
Okay, that's
They have that whole search result object thing that's sort of
wait.
lazily.
Sushma, can you speak to this, please?
That why search text search return search result object?
No.
Oh, the properties of search.
By the way, why is the N missing here? I do think resource search, N should be supported.
There's a max items option.
I see. And the default is like 10 or something? What is the default?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can look that up.
Well, why isn't it given
The default is all.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Scroll down a bit.
Okay, fine. Okay, properties, text search, source, form, prop. What are the properties? Following properties. Following additional properties. So didn't you look at this? I mean, because this is the place you need to go, obviously, right?
Well, there's also web search and web image search, which seemed like closer siblings of resource.
What are the properties that those things? So Sushma,
for those have data set and thumbnail, and I'm not sure.
So okay, just to give a recap to everyone, when we did the search consistency, we wanted everything to follow web search, web image search, and even text search is supposed to follow that. But then text search currently gives search result object, which is which has a lazy way of doing it, and we wanted data set to also have a lazy implementation, which we do not have yet. So we will make text search consistent with all of these other searches when we have this.
Okay, all right. So these other searches, what do they have in terms of properties?
It's it's dependent on the search. Like web image search has thumbnails. Nothing else is going to have thumbnails necessarily.
Okay.
Looking at text search, I think I should change what I have as objects here to resource objects, or just resource object. Looks like we're inconsistent in plural or singular for those things.
Yeah.
Where? I'm sorry, where are you talking?
So right now at the bottom of your screen, you have snippets, page titles, hyperlinks. If you look at text search, you have singular things like object and association. So there's an inconsistency.
Yeah, that's probably wrong.
Plural.
It's probably wrong. Okay. By the way, this is a thing Sushma should follow up.
Yeah.
The in allow adult content.
Okay.
There is a new option to word list, which is related to that, and I don't think it's consistent with that name. And I think we probably should try and induce some consistency there. That's an issue for Alan.
Okay.
Okay. I'm being told that the 12.0 is in the dock. Let's see if that's really true. I see no evidence of it launching. Oh, it's very slow, but something is launching. And if I get this, then hopefully, boy, this is slow. Okay. All right. Lots of flashing. Oh, wow, that 100% now doesn't have a decimal point after it. That's a piece of progress. Okay, so now if I say resource search of cat. What the heck is that doing? Why isn't this instantaneous?
Well, actually, I guess it searches 3 things, but it only does 2 text searches. It also looks for things that you've done cloud deploy on, if you've created your own resource with cloud deploy. So is that deployed resources?
Okay, that was no good. That was no good. We don't want to do that, right? Why would we? What is it doing there? Look, I don't have any deployed resources. So there's nothing to search. Why did it take that amount of time?
Maybe it was Cloud Connect. I don't know. This is a brand new kernel. This one should only be doing, it already has the metadata from your cloud and the
There
local
are
index.
no ostriches cited.
I think that's probably correct.
Okay.
If you do something like face, it'll have some neural nets and some data mixed.
Okay. Let's take a look at what this is doing. Why is it called data resource there? No, that's wrong.
It could just be data.
Type is the content type of the content object. That's I'm sorry, the resource object there. If I look at the resource object here, and how do I even get that resource object? Copy data to clipboard. Okay. Resource object. Oh, that's snazzy. Okay.
Right. We made it height, string height, so it'll look better in the data set. So the resource type here is data. Or,
Well, no, it says type data
resource.
Right. That's very weird. Why
we have this. We call them data resources instead of data, like initially. Either one works. Whenever you type it in, you can type in either one. But,
okay.
If you search for something like face, you'll get a mix of data and neural net.
Why is this so slow? This is insanely slow. Come on, you gotta optimize this. That's no good. That speed is no good.
I can break down the speed for you if you like.
Yeah, right. Please do. That speed is no good. The text search in the,
it's running in the cloud, you realize, right?
Yeah. But that should be blindingly fast. Right? A standard index search, text index search is very fast. It's really a shame we don't have the people from text search here. That's sort of a wrong thing. Unless Sushma wants to comment on this.
No, I don't know about text search. I mean, the implementation of text search.
Yeah. Should we get Nicholas Lichtmeyer?
So the way it's implemented on the server side, each repository has its own index. So this is doing two different text searches.
I don't care. They should be really fast. Okay. So, the other thing we want to do probably in resource search is it probably needs an option that gives the list of where or possibly this is in the system servers stuff that says where the indices are for all where it should be searching.
Right. I have a hidden option for that. If we want to put a design in, I can have that done in a day or in an hour. Whatever we want to.
Well, what would that option be? Those are the locations that it should search in.
Right. So there's an undocumented location that's string search locations where you can give things like local cloud repository as strings, and it works right now. But we've never brought up a design. It might be the right time to do that right now.
Sorry, say that again. What you have?
A string option. The name of the option is search locations, and it takes a list where it can have the string local, the string cloud, or the string repository.
Well, how does that work for text search?
It chooses which indices text search uses.
Way we could do this initially is method. Okay? Just have a method option for resource search, because I think it's a little bit squiggly what's going on. Am I making sense?
Sure.
Because web search, that's what web search does, because it has to choose between different web search providers for right now. Won't always be the case for various reasons. Okay, so I would put a method option there. And for right now, what I would do is I would say resource search, blah, blah, blah. What did you call it?
Repository as a string is what I had.
Well, what do you mean? That's
what I have for search locations. Sorry, I search locations.
No, what we should say is index locations. Are they the index locations, or are they the?
Well, they're names like cloud and local. They're not pointing. It doesn't take a file
that
path.
is similar to persistence locations, right?
It is. It's similar to persistence locations. Yeah. It's much easier than asking people for a file path.
Yeah, sure.
And I already know where these things are, so it's stupid for them to tell me where they are.
What's the right name here? Well, what is it called inside content object when it's a remote location for the content object? Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I'm looking at the doc page for content object right now. Location.
It's just
Reference location. Reference location is. I don't know what the difference between those is actually.
I think we should call it locations and just have a list of those strings. Method, arrow, locations, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's a pretty detailed thing. But,
yep. But yeah, if
go ahead and
the advanced user can make their
right.
Much
okay.
more efficient.
So now, did somebody get Nicholas Lickmeyer?
Alex went to find him. I'll check with him.
Do we want to call the location for the central resource system to be Wolfram repository? And then if we expand to other locations, we can put the actual...
Well, why don't we just call it Wolfram Cloud?
Well, you could cloud deploy things too, right? We have $resource system base. So we could call it resource system.
And that would default to ours, or it would default to the base?
Whichever, to whatever you have resource system base is, which, everyone in the world right now has that value. So.
And if you wanted to add a different base, you just add it as the URL as a string?
For now, I think so. But I mean, what we obviously need is a resource system path in the end.
Yeah.
That's the name that we should have here, is essentially search path. I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Actually, the name we should have is even simpler than that. It's just path. And path, yeah, that's the right name.
Still underneath method, though.
I'm not sure. I mean, we could introduce this. Okay, for now, let's leave it there. Okay, and that will obviously be the order as well in which it will try things. Make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's not really looking for.
Let's call it locations for right now, with the intention that we move to calling it path when we have a better way to specify these.
If you don't also give max items, then the order isn't really important.
Okay. But the most important thing here is the speed is wrong. Okay, very, very wrong. So we need to be able to break down the different pieces and see where they're coming from. Make sense?
I can profile all of that.
So on our live stream, there's lots of energy around the fact that the resource system does not support things that are tens of gigabytes in size. We are aware. In order to do that usefully, we should be using MongoDB probably to store these things. Because we can't, right now, what the resource system does is single gulp content objects, right? They're all stored. Could the content object point to a MongoDB database or not?
Yeah, the client would just need to know how to, interface with it.
So what do you mean by that? So, I mean, we could use
Mongo. I don't think that, with the data repository, I'm not sure if...
Why not? Why not? Because they're just content objects, right? Am I making sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what we gain from that.
Having a thing that's 100 gigabytes in size. Because the whole point is content objects have sub pieces.
But is this going to be a database we're controlling and administering?
Yeah, it's MongoDB. We have our own MongoDB instance. Right? That's what the Mongo link does. Am I making sense?
But yeah, but it generally when we've used that for things like machine learning, it's not necessarily one giant monolithic thing. It's a terabyte of 100 megabyte items, right?
No. You're not understanding my point. We have an instance of that, right? So we can access that instance. Clearly, if somebody says, I want the whole thing, right, and it's 20 terabytes, they're going to be waiting a while. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, the whole thing will not really work. But if what they want to do is to extract pieces, then it will work fine. Right? To say, get me the whole thing, depending on how big it is, it might be something that you can load. It might be something you cannot load. I mean, the issue, I guess, is there's two problems. One is to store a bigger data set in MongoDB where you can basically retrieve subparts of that data set that might be 100 megabytes in size or something, right? So like get all the pictures of ostriches from the data set.
Right.
What I'm saying, that
Yes.
You should be able to do. Now, if you say I want the whole data set, well, it's very big and it may take a long time to download. And the only correct way to download it in that scenario is probably to have a MongoDB running on your computer, and that's a different and more exotic thing.
Right. I'm just saying there's this whole layer of, saying just ostriches that has to be taught to the client for each set of data.
No, that's not right. That's not right, because the fact is we just have to have a standard way in the okay, so the question is, could we back some resource objects with MongoDB? Right, that's the question here.
Yeah, we could.
Okay.
So what do you type it? What's the top level design for saying just give me ostriches?
Well, I assume that it's the resource object. It is okay, that's a good question. I mean, in the resource object, we know how to do it. In resource data, it's less clear how to do it. Right? In the resource object, we have the,
that was my point. So for each one of these resource objects, we'll need
resource
to document this whole query language. That's consistent, but the values are specific to the resource, right?
I agree. I agree.
That's the hard part.
The case. I mean, what we should do is we should look at for machine learning training sets, for example, what's the useful thing to do? And if the answer is, you got to have the whole data set, well, then it's a question of file size. Okay. And let's talk about that for a second. What prevents us from having a gigabyte-sized thing in the resource system?
We have a couple. We have a couple neural nets that are that big, that are single.
Okay, so
1 digit of gigabyte.
Those download just as a file download, right?
Yes.
And then subsequent access to them works however it works. But the issue here is that what you want to do ultimately is an out-of-core net train against this large data set, right? So I think that's the plumbing which we haven't figured out, if any. Right? Certainly internally, we absolutely do that. We use out-of-core data sets to do training, right?
Right.
So the question is, how do we provide that for users through the resource system?
Right.
So do we know an answer to that?
I mean, if it's specific to training, I mean, we could put it in the data repository, but it almost sounds like its own type of resource.
Well, perhaps that's true. Okay, so listen. I think it's a good point. Let us have a discussion. Can you have a discussion with Sebastian and Megan and so on about the neural net repository and about training sets and what is really needed from them? Get what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. So let's come back to this. question on our live stream about searching by content type will be useful. I agree. Can that be done? Let's take a look. So if I want to do faces which are neural nets, how would I do that? Face, which is
Well, in 11.3, we already had, you would just say neural net goes to face. But in 12, since we're going to be consistent with text search, you would have a list, and then it would say resource type goes to neural net.
Hi, this is Nicolas.
Hello. Okay.
And then you could just have comma face. It's not, doesn't need to be a rule. That's
I think the comment might be about the content type specifically for
Ooh.
data.
What the heck is that?
Okay, well, something went wrong here. What was the comment? Okay, this is an uninterruptible failure, it looks like.
Looks like it's something out of text search.
Well, maybe...
Maybe 12.0, there's a bug on text search. We'll have to track that down.
So track it down. Okay, so the question for Nicholas... What was the question for Nicholas here?
Speeds.
That was the first question, yeah. But so it should be the case that calling the cloud for a text search index query is very fast, right, Nicholas?
Crawling the cloud?
No, calling.
Sorry?
Calling,
Yes.
the cloud. Right.
I don't know. I don't know about the calling the cloud part, but text search itself is pretty fast.
Okay, well, we've got to track this down, guys. So
Yeah, I'm going to profile it, and if that leads to Nick, that will lead to Nick. If it doesn't, it won't.
okay. All right, okay, fine. But then the so what are the different places you're looking? You're looking in the central repository, you're looking in deployed cloud objects, you're looking in local cloud local objects. Is that right?
That's
Is there
right.
anything else
That's
you're looking?
Nope, those are the three.
Okay, so each of those, if you have to look once, so every time you look, presumably you create an index. Is that a true statement or not?
No, you create one index for the cloud objects. I create a new index each kernel session. For the local objects, it persists, and for the repository, obviously.
Why are you creating a new index for each kernel session? That seems wrong. All you have to do is do an update, because the update system knows how to look at file dates.
I'm creating content objects from the cloud object metadata. So I retrieve all the metadata for the cloud objects that are deployed, which I already have stored in one place. And I create content objects from those to create a search index.
Okay, that seems wrong. You shouldn't be doing that every session.
Sorry, were you talking about these errors earlier?
No, we're not talking about the error.
Because I know what these errors are.
Okay, we're not talking about that. We're talking about...
Okay. Sorry.
Listen to what we are talking about, okay? We're talking about right now, Bob is creating a new index for cloud objects that are deployed resources, okay? He's creating a new index for every session, and this seems completely crazy to me. Okay, so what should be happening is there should be an index created from people's cloud objects. In fact, I don't know, Nicholas, what's happening for people doing a search on their cloud objects?
There's an API, I think. I think Carlo did that. And the search runs in the cloud.
No, you're not answering the question. I mean, so what I'm saying is, okay, we've got a lot of background noise, but okay. The question is, I have however many hundreds, thousands, whatever it is, of cloud objects in my account, right? They're mostly notebooks, okay? How can I do a search for the word ostrich in all of those notebooks?
I don't know exactly how the cloud everything works in the cloud. But
Okay, so Sushma, that's for you, because that's an application of text search that needs to work, right?
Okay.
And that's something Matt
Yeah, I will pass it on.
was also supposed to. I mean, that's part of the reason that Matt was PMing the text search things, because we know we need text search for cloud objects in somebody's cloud account, right? Yes, Sushma.
I am not the PM for text search, so I'm not sure. Nicholas, do you know?
So somebody said you were. What?
No, I am trying to make the search functions consistent. I don't know details about each of those functions.
Okay,
But
all right, fine. Okay. Well, so this is an important thing for Matt to deal with. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's come back now. Okay, so Bob, you cannot recreate the index every session. Just totally crazy. So Nicholas, it's my understanding that search index update goes and looks at file dates to figure out what files need to be. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so you should be running search index update, Bob.
That's exactly what I'm doing locally, right?
Okay, but why aren't you doing that in the cloud? Right, Bob?
Well, I'm thinking what's going to do that in the cloud? Cloud evaluate. Cloud evaluate. Should I be running cloud evaluate each time, or should I be deploying an API to every user's cloud account that does update search index?
Well, how are you doing the update of the search index right now? When you say resource search, you say you are updating you are recreating the index in the cloud.
I'm not creating an index in the cloud. I'm retrieving metadata from the cloud and creating an in-memory index locally.
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, this should be being done.
It's not, because then you don't have to call the cloud at all the second time.
But then you do have to call the cloud. You have to call the cloud every single time, because every time you're doing a search in the main repository, you're calling the cloud.
You have to call the API in the resource system, but you don't have to make a second call for your own cloud deployed resources each time.
Okay, I think this is wrong, right? I mean, you shouldn't be moving data because you have no guarantee. This is crazy. You have no guarantee. If the user has 10,000 files, right, you're moving metadata about 10,000 files over to the client side, and that's just crazy, right?
If they've cloud deployed 10,000 resource objects,
that's correct. It will not scale. So
it will not scale.
It's a bad idea. Instead, what should be happening is, if you really want to search the resources that you are storing in the cloud, you should call the cloud to do it. And it's the same API call that you need to make to the repository to search it.
It's a completely different thing.
No, it's not a different thing. They both simply have indices in the cloud. They are going through an API in the cloud, and they're doing that search, right?
Well, one, we control the account with API. The other one, are we going to create APIs and users' accounts for them?
We don't have to create an API. As you say, if we really want to do this, okay. So, first of all, it is not obvious to me that okay. The issue is, this is a case. So, for example, text search right now does not support searching users' cloud objects, does it?
I don't believe so, no.
I don't think so.
Okay, right. So this is a new thing we haven't done before, where a function potentially on the desktop is searching your cloud account, right? Yes, Bob?
Yes.
Okay, so the first case of that is text search. I mean, arguably, we should have a thing called cloud search, which simply searches your cloud account for some particular thing.
Right. If we had that, then that would obviously be the way to do it.
I think that's what we should plan on having, and I think you should, for right now, you could even disable that capability here. And particularly,
we have this method that we just spec'd, and the default could not include cloud.
That's fine. That would be fine. And you could use the code you already have if you choose to include cloud there.
Right. That makes sense. I like that plan.
But because I think that something is going very wrong with that cloud thing, and it's kind of crazy to move the metadata over to the client side. Okay, but
I don't understand. If you want to search each cloud's user account, why not keeping an index per account per system?
Yes, of course. Yes,
And
exactly. That's
and
what
I think and to work for that to work the best, we will need to have like each file update should be indexed. Not
I
a
agree.
session.
I agree. It should
A
trigger an
plugin.
index, a trigger
If you create a file, then it should be indexed.
That's right. So we
Maybe
don't want to be
maybe
burning
there should be
CPU
like
time. Right. We can't
sorry.
burn CPU time every second that everybody updates.
No. But then you could do something like this. You could mark the file as dirty somewhere.
Yes.
Like this and this and this and this need to be updated. And the next time you do a search, you trigger some kind of update, something like that.
No, that's a good idea. That's a perfectly reasonable way to do it. Which is what?
Of course, update search index will check modified. So doing that all the time, maybe it's the same thing. Unless
Well,
you
it
have
might not be the same thing because you might have a very large collection of files, and so you really want to be able to know that. You want to be able to either have the cloud file system inform you this is the list of files that need to be updated, and it could just accumulate that list until the next time you call, search, cloud search, at which point it will then go and do the update and clear that list. That's a reasonable way to do it. But okay, so that relies. So then the way we would do this, Bob's thing, is it would be a subcase of cloud search, searching for a particular directory, particular entries in a directory.
Right.
Makes sense to everybody?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So then what we need to concentrate on, and that's the thing for Matt, is cloud search, and that's for Nicholas. Nicholas, maybe you could try to prototype that.
What exactly?
What I just said, the cloud search, which takes, you want to search for the word ostrich in your cloud files. Cloud search of ostrich would do that. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, text search works on text files. If text search is the implementation thing, then are we pulling out the metadata from each cloud object into a text file, plus adding cloud objects that happen to be text files?
That's what we
there are hairs to figure out.
Text search, right?
Yeah.
Remember what we talked about? We have a pre-processing step where we take every file, whether it's a notebook or whatever else, we turn it into text, and then we run text search on it. Right? We talked about that, about skeleton files and so on. Remember?
Are we going to do that locally as well?
What's our choice?
For text search. I mean, we're not doing that for text search now, locally.
Well, what are we doing when you search a notebook locally?
Only text files.
No, wait a second. Nicholas, what are we doing when you search a notebook, when you ask text search to index a notebook?
It gets imported into plain text.
Okay,
so
fine. Then that's the answer. Bob, are there any further questions there?
I didn't realize. Is that just for it's because text search documentation says it has a brief list of files file types that it says it supports.
Yes, the text search has a list of extensions. It knows that it can convert into plain text, and it does import on those.
So notebook is on
extensions.
Yes, it is. And
I didn't realize notebook was on there. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So cloud search. Do I have to make a note of this? Can we make sure that cloud search is discussed, I guess, in the next text search meeting? Sushma, could you let Matt know that, please?
I can pass on the message, Stephen. This is
okay. Actually, I'm going to make a note in my central list of things like this that should be being implemented. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, just a second. This is a good function, by the way, and one that we've needed for a while. Okay, So now let's go back to resource search. So questions from our live stream about searching for things that are, for example, images, content types. But I think, okay,
Yeah,
so for
that'll
example,
in 12 that'll be supported just like we have here. There's if you look at the tentative cell, the second tentative cell, it says what fields are supported, and this will. Oh, I see an extra space there. This will rely on the upcoming resource type pages that we need to create in documentation to fully list all of those for each resource.
where is the resource type? I don't see it here.
Right, so categories. Categories is an example of one. Task type is one for data and neural nets.
Content
Right.
type would be another one for data.
Right.
Oh, I don't know what that.
Yeah. Now I understand why I had an extra space.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll fix that.
Okay.
So yeah. So that'll depend on those. A page for neural nets, a page for data that lays out what those fields are.
Okay. Fine. Okay. Possible response properties. I wouldn't call it response properties quite.
Yeah. Just calling it a property seemed weird.
Okay. You want me to untentative these things?
That'd be great.
Searches for resource objects.
Is metadata too jargony?
Yeah, it's awful. It's garbage, if I might say so. I mean, what is it actually searching? Is it searching so that we have to be clear about this, what it's searching? So is it searching the, what did we say before?
It's still in there.
Why don't you copy what it says here? Why don't you just copy this?
Because we're getting rid of keywords. We have this. We're using I took the thing from text search.
Okay, gives a data set.
Right. Nothing about that old one is true anymore.
Okay, of resources in local and cloud. Okay,
so that's just wrong. What are resource systems?
Well, so what did you want to say here?
I don't know. You deleted it.
Sorry.
Stored locally or locally?
No, that's not what you're saying. What you're saying is, this is.
So I was saying a data set of resources whose metadata include that. Which metadata matches form. Right. Look at the usage for text search.
Okay, that contain text matching form seems right. Whose descriptions contain text matching form.
But it's not just the description, right? It's the.
What is it?
The details. Look at the third bullet point and fourth bullet point down. It contains pretty much all the metadata that's of the resource object. That's.
Well, so why aren't we searching the content of the resource object as well? We should be. I mean, in other words, if
we're using text search doesn't work on.
No. But we can obviously export the content of the resource object, which is itself a data set, right? We can obviously export that to text, so text search can work on it. So, for example,
for a neural net, for a Wolfram language function, for.
Well, that's what we have to do for each of these cases, right? We have to see what we're doing. Right, for a neural net, if there is a name of a layer or the name of a port, we could absolutely search for it. Obviously, we're not searching for the innards of the weight matrix, right? So similarly for data, if there's a 1,000 rows of names of different kinds of animals, we should be able to search for that. Making sense?
Yep.
So separate issue is to extract the content from the data sets in data repository, for example.
Yeah, it's not a trivial project, but it's something we should work on. I would prefer to not document it for version 12, that it works.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. So, okay. All right. Gosh. So we have to write. Okay. So, so here we're saying, I don't particularly like that. That this is written that way because we're vague about what it's actually returning. Yeah, it gives a data set of resources that contain text matching form. It's basically the point, right?
Yeah.
Now this gives the property of the search results from searching for form. Gives the property prop. Well, that's not right. I mean, so we should say resource search searches the Wolfram searches all Wolfram resource system.
Do you see the line 2 lines below where you're typing? I think you're working on the same thing.
Okay, I agree.
Right, and that's why I have that line about removing one of the next two.
Okay, it's amazing how poorly I can read. Okay. I don't think that's really right, and I think we shouldn't say that because we're going to change it.
I think we should say something.
I don't think we should say anything because it's wrong right now, and we should make it as right as we can make it. Now, these specific fields. Okay, what we need to do is we need to say, these are the specific fields, right? So we're going to have content, for example, is one of the fields. Right, so content will be the actual thing extracted from the data set, for example.
Yeah.
So I think we need a little bit more detail here. You can see what roughly we want to do, and typical. I think we should say, how do we do this? And we can't do that there, but in text search we can do those restrictions. How do we say it there? Actually, wouldn't this be a better way to say it? Returns the property prop for each result. I think that's a better way to say it.
I think that's what I had. Oh, no, I didn't. It was a little bit different, yeah. That's good.
Okay, all right, okay. So here, what we want to say, where is the arrowed form of this? Okay, so what are we doing with all of these? This table should presumably be be repeated in resource search, right?
Instead of just saying it supports all the forms of text search.
Yes, because we don't do that because it's just a nuisance for the user. We might as well just say what it does, right? That's the general. I mean, we should repeat all of this stuff here, right?
Okay.
So people don't have to go searching for another page. It's pointless. But then what we need to say, when it says field here, what kinds of fields does this usually?
Right, that's in there. It's now the third tentative.
No. But where is it in text search?
You have to define the index with fields in order for it to work there. The resource system, we know.
So then what we would say here is typical fields supported include. Right?
Yep.
And what about these? Why wouldn't it have these options as well? Content field options and so on.
I haven't gotten that to work. Maybe I'll follow up with Nick on that.
Yeah,
I've tried, but I haven't gotten it to work yet. Okay.
All right. Okay. So let's turn around that, copy this stuff in there, add the stuff about what fields, a table of a list of what fields are supported. With respect to these responses, well, this isn't the same type of thing at all. Returns the property prop of the search results. Because it's actually a global thing. If we're going to say...
right, it's sort of a mix of the two, which is weird. Because you can put things like name in there, and it'll just give you a list of names. But you can also...
A list of names?
Yeah. So if you see a key there, maybe we should call it field.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So, okay, hold on a second. Possible properties of search results. Include this. Oop. Okay. No. Data set including resource objects. It's actually not included. Well,
has the name and the resource type and
data set including. Okay. What's the list of associations?
It's a list of associations with the name and the description and the resource type, and I can find that full list.
Okay. List of associations giving.
It's basically the rows of the data set.
Certain properties of the why do we have it?
It's consistent with web image search.
Okay. Giving certain properties of resource objects. I think we need to move on to another the next segment of this meeting. Resource objects. Let's put this the other way around here. If this is how we're doing it. But now, what's the list of values for? No, that's a string, right?
Yeah.
Okay. List of values for the specified field. List of associations containing values of for the specified field, giving values for the specified fields. Okay, so this one is again something of the form field 1, field 2, etc., right?
That's right.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. Okay, so a little bit more to develop here, but I think this is in good shape otherwise. Anything else?
You can probably, the max items field, a row is good to otherwise.
No, let's not do that. Let's do this. resource search supports the following rather lame option. Okay, because that's
We
going to
could
be
put method in here if we want right now.
yes. Okay, fine. Okay, so max items all, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's the number of items to return. Okay, method. So that should be automatic by default, I would assume. Where and how to search for resources, we'll say for now. Now, is there a resource? The resource system base is not an option. It's just $resource system base, correct?
It's also an option
So why isn't it
without
in
the
here?
dollar.
Okay, so it should be in here,
It should
right?
be in here.
So that defaults to $resource system base.
That's right.
The base location of the global resource system. Is that correct?
Yes. I think we left it out before because we didn't create pages for those symbols yet.
Okay, fine. Well, I'm not even sure those symbols are right. So
they're not useful yet because there's only one resource system base worth using.
Well, okay, so let's futurize that because I also don't think it's right. I think those should be a path. I don't think they should be an individual place. And that's an issue for Brad, right?
Yeah, I could see that. That makes sense.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to the next item?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I think we're done with all of this. We've had a bunch of comments on the live stream about people complaining about, including Ethan Black 86, who says, I have many machine learning datasets sitting on my laptop that I would like to submit, but the resource submission notebook doesn't allow for using file for out-of-core data. Comments from folks here on that?
I'm not sure what he wants to do out of core.
Well, he wants to specify file.
Right, you can do that. You can do that.
Can do that. So what will happen?
Well,
will it just copy it over as a file, or will it try and load it into core?
Well, if you evaluate the cell, it'll bring it into core for the purpose of evaluating the example section, because you need the data to make the examples work. But when you do submit, it will just copy. It should just copy the file to the cloud object. It might.
Okay, but when you use the thing in a desktop session, it will load the stuff from the file, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like fine. Well, so that may be the answer. So
we plan to revisit the definition notebook.
Okay.
In a large way.
Yes, but that's what we're trying to do.
Not for data. We're not doing data today.
No, we're not doing data for today, but we will do data in the future since we're doing functions and so on right now.
Totally
okay,
agree.
So we're moving to the next segment of this meeting. So people who were involved with the search part could drop out, and what we're moving to is, what are we moving to? The definition notebook for the function repository. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and where do you have that material?
Stephen, I just mailed you the agenda.
Okay. Is there a notebook for this?
It's on Twiki, Stephen.
It should be a notebook.
Okay.
Don't do Twikis.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, so for the folks who are involved only in the search part can depart. Magnificent. Wolfram Desktop quit unexpectedly when I ran that packet update. Any comments? Manu, have you tried it?
It was working for me.
Okay. Well, this Wolfram Desktop quitting, when I run quit, the process dies. Okay, when I quit the kernel, the process dies. That's been a repeated problem for the last few weeks. Okay, so I don't know if that's been reported, if that's a known bug. Does anybody know?
I don't know.
Well, so I'm assuming, how can I test whether the packlet update has happened?
Packlet information of string function resource should be 1.2.8, I believe. There you go.
Yep. Okay. So wait a minute. So there's yet a different thing for function resource here, or is that?
This is the latest development packlet. This is what should be in the 12 build tomorrow, but there were changes. We wanted to get to you
All right,
already.
fine. Okay, so this should create the function.
This will be the new one now, since you've installed the packlet.
Okay. There it is. Is that it?
That's it. The header design, we just got a good mock-up from design this morning, so
Let's
that's
take a look at that design. So that is in the definition notebook design thing here. Let me take a look here. Okay, so it's a very lively orange then.
Wake up.
We can call in design folks now.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So the rest of the notebook is just using default styles. Is that correct?
Well, there's these message warnings and those more info buttons that have inline style sheets.
Okay.
The main fonts and colors and stuff, though.
Yeah.
Default styles.
So I'm gonna let's just see what happens just for fun if I magnify this. Oh, it looks just fine. Okay. Although of course the header bar doesn't magnify, but that's just fine. Okay, I do think that should have an information box as well there. Oh no, we can't have an information box. Yeah, you should have an information box for this section at the top that describes the camel casing and describes what the one-line description should have. Does that make sense? Or is there a separate page that is, or is the idea to have a separate page for all of that information?
That was something I think we were hoping to have be self-documenting, but there will be a style guide page that we can put that information on if we don't want to put it here.
Well, so I'm assuming that all those information things will point to the will point to whatever that central style guide is. Yes?
Well, we're going to have some of these. I mean, they'll also have the information in the notebook itself, but they could also include a link to the style guide within
Have you started writing the style guide?
No.
No.
Okay. Don't do that. Please. Come on. Don't do that.
What do you want to do?
I want to have something. You either have to say generically what it is. Don't give something which is a specific, right? When the other ones say things like keyword 1 and author name, just say related object. Right? See here? And give a couple, give maybe 2 examples if you want. Okay, is this related functions or is this related other things?
It's related resource objects.
Okay,
It could be
so
data
then,
or neural net.
Okay, then say here name of the resource object. Name of the resource. Okay, do you get what I'm saying? Because, right, it should be genericized as everything else is here.
Yeah.
Not a specific example. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Did the design folks join? Jeremy, I think.
I'm here. Yeah, I don't think Naoko is yet.
Okay, should we wait for that?
We can get going, I think. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we're looking at the header bar. Okay. So this was saying, so this is active here.
Yes.
Generate resource, generate object and documentation. That's a little hard to read, isn't it? That this overprints that. Is that the right way to do this? That the first thing there.
I think that's a platform dependent thing because it appears underneath the button on my machine.
Okay.
You can work on it then. I think showing it under is clearly a better
Yeah,
idea.
it's clearly better. And by the way, the alignment is wrong here, as you can see. Generate
Yeah,
straight lines
that's
is wrong.
known. I just haven't really touched it much since design was still
Okay.
working on it.
So it's a little weird to have these combo box-ish things. Okay, resource object only. What?
These are the drop downs we spec'd out last week.
No, I remember. I just had never seen one in the flesh. So what happens if I just press that button? I see, I get that. If I say that, what was this here?
Because it's all the placeholder content still.
I see. What's this?
Because you changed the default placeholder content. It didn't recognize it as placeholder content. And it tried to find that resource object and it couldn't.
Ah, okay. That's fair enough. Okay. Boy, there are a number of moving parts to look at here, aren't there?
Yeah, you haven't even hit open sample notebook yet. There's another significant moving part.
Okay, so I don't understand. This is the standard, this is the full size, and this is the full size. So I don't quite understand why this header looks so different. Is that just a feature of the fact that you haven't applied the designs yet?
Yeah, that was just kind of thrown together quickly to make it work. I copied stuff from other notebooks.
So this now says deployed for this session. How are you going to make that work in the cloud? I mean, it's a cutesy thing, but how is it going to work in the cloud?
Do you mean the ribbon itself?
Yep, that's what I mean.
It's a doc cell. They work in cloud.
Okay, all right. So this you can make that work then.
Yeah, I don't know why not.
Okay. Okay. Function, resource, definition notebook. Okay, open sample notebook, style guidelines. Terrific. Okay. Do you think the word generate is clear enough here? Build. Maybe it should be build instead of generate. Comments?
It works.
Like generate, but build isn't too technical, I think.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe I've just been in the biz too long.
Template notebooks say generate.
All right. Is it worth saying? See, I find this really confusing.
It's intimidating that there's 4 things to choose from.
No, that's not what concerns me. It's not understanding what on earth this is. Could we say deploy? No. Generate. I just generate resource object and documentation.
With documentation instead of and could be a little bit better.
Help. I mean, do you think we should reorder them? Just resource object only, and then resource object and documentation? Just because I think it's a little bit cognitively easier to take the resource object first.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's do that at least. Fine, I think that will be enough. Okay. We're going to need to write all this text, right? Like the placeholder text here. Okay,
Yeah,
so
Did you guys decide how to handle preview?
Yeah.
How?
It works like
Yeah.
the cloud web deployment.
which,
No, I mean
where's preview?
with Word.
Preview is the same thing as for this session only with documentation for this session only.
I think the last version you had a separate button, and I think the idea is to combine that with this action. It's just a matter of letting people know they're the same. Whether or not we need the word preview in there.
There's no. Oh, I see. Where?
The last iteration had a dedicated preview button.
Mm-hmm.
We folded that into the generate button here.
because it's equivalent to just generating the thing with documentation.
I think we should just have a button that says local preview, because I think that is going to. I mean, local preview for this session, why don't we just say, before we get onto the generate, why don't we just say local preview? We're getting an awful lot of buttons here, aren't we?
Mm.
Well, if we have a local preview button and the idea is that it will pop up that preview notebook without any deployment locally or cloud, then we could get rid of the generate resource object and documentation.
How are we going to do that?
If there was a dedicated preview button, that would...
What about cloud deployment?
Oh, I see, because
So
generating it, deploying it to the cloud doesn't automatically open that page.
Are you thinking for documentation, have the preview be like a mandatory intermediate step? Like if you do want documentation, you generate the preview, then from there you deploy?
I just think it's going to be super useful. Well, look, we could have a button that says preview. Okay, I have a different idea here. Yeah, on the live stream, someone's commenting, building documentation for custom packages is a difficult process for users. Could this function be adapted for package authors? Yes, that is the point. That is what we are doing here. This is the junior version of that. Okay, so what I would propose is that we have, there's a different proposal. So we have preview and we have generate. Preview and we have deploy. Okay, and those are the only two buttons. There's no generate, it just says preview and deploy. And they probably have icons as well. Okay. Under preview, and then we have much longer descriptions here. So under preview, the way it works is preview locally. And then in my cloud account. Something like that, right?
On the desktop, it could mean a couple things.
Okay, all right. Preview.
Any sort of preview that involves the cloud is going to involve deployment, though.
You could say locally in a notebook.
Yeah, okay, locally in a notebook. How about in a local notebook and in a cloud notebook?
What is a cloud notebook?
It's a notebook in the cloud.
I mean, I know what a cloud notebook is. I don't know what it has to do with this.
Well, I think the main thing people want to preview if they're planning to submit is what the shingle page is going to look like, because that's what's going to be presented on the website.
But it's not a notebook on the website. It's just a web page.
Right.
Okay, well, preview in a local notebook on the cloud.
that makes sense.
Okay.
So preview on the cloud is also going to deploy it, though.
That is correct. I think that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, now deploy. So the only thing is you might be left with some detritus from a deployed resource function that you don't want anymore.
That's right.
Tough luck, I think. Where does it deploy to? Is it in a subdirectory?
Yes.
It's fine.
Well, yes.
Can say the same.
These are doing anonymous cloud objects right now.
The part that'll be picked up by resource search is in the dedicated subdirectory, but the result it'll be in.
Well, how do you know what the cloud object that was deployed to is here?
Well, we have the result stripes right now.
Which means this.
Yes.
Yeah. If we do preview on the cloud, we could say preview deployed to this location. If someone wanted to clean it up, they'd at least know it was there
Yes, I
and
think
know how
that's
to
a
get
good
rid of
idea.
it.
That's a good idea. Yep, that's a good idea. Okay, so now deploy. So why not generate documentation? But we could
slower.
Okay, all right. Locally, so then we can just say resource object, deploy resource object in this session only. I mean, we can have a quite long menu here with separators in it if we need to. Okay.
If you had resource object in the button title, you wouldn't need to repeat it. It'd be like deploy resource object, and then it could just say in this session only. I just see you repeating it 6 times.
Fine. Deploy resource object.
And do we want it to be deploy resource function?
Yes, we do. Yeah, this is good. Okay, so now we'll say in this session only, in this session only with documentation.
Which will be equivalent to the preview in a local notebook.
I think so. Is that right?
It'll behave the same, but it shouldn't get the preview badge in that case, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Well, there's an interesting point there. Is the preview notebook our version of local documentation? Like, are we going to store that notebook so I can ask the object for its
preview? It's just a preview.
So then I'm not sure what this deploy in session with documentation is.
Well, yeah, if you create one in session with documentation, then you run local cache on that resource object. Would people expect to be able to get that documentation later?
Right, then it's real. Anybody know where I'm storing this? It's in repositories, function repository.
Yeah.
If this deploy one is going to be long, I think we could drop preview on the cloud and just have all the cloud deployment here. And then
No. People want preview. People are going to want preview in the. I mean, look. Okay, in the cloud itself. I think both of those are useful, but in the cloud itself, you probably just want preview on the cloud. You don't want in a local notebook, obviously. Get what I'm saying? If you're doing this from the cloud.
Right.
Well, what we could do is we could say preview in a notebook and on the cloud. And on the cloud means the shingle page, and in a notebook just means the notebook version of this. Get what I'm saying? Hopefully, eventually, those will be the same. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah, in a notebook on the cloud. Yeah.
It's a little bit weird, but I mean, it's pretty clear. If you say preview in a notebook, it's going to come up locally.
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
now here, okay, for this session only, I don't think this one is worth having. In this session only with document, I think we want to say
Yeah, I don't think so either.
locally on this computer, paren with documentation. Or should that be the default to do it with documentation? I can't see why you would want to do it locally on the computer without documentation.
I agree.
I'm not sure. I'm still not clear on what the with documentation means.
It means it's a preview notebook that doesn't say preview, and it's stored along with the resource in the local cache.
Great.
Okay. People are saying on the live stream that they want a package repository. Believe me, we are working on it. It has a bunch of additional complexity to this. This is useful in its own right, and it is useful as a first step towards the full package repository. It's coming. I won't even start enumerating what some of the issues are. It's actually, I mean, part of it goes through the Packlet system, which has nice updating mechanisms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, locally on this computer, for my cloud account and publicly in the cloud. Well, I think we just say the same thing for my cloud account. Look, let's skip this with documentation for my cloud account and publicly in the cloud. What's wrong with just generating the documentation in this case?
It's a little slower.
Okay, all right. So then let's say in this session only, resource function only.
We could, at the bottom, list them and say without documentation. Instead of saying resource function only, just imply that.
Let's do this. I think that's okay.
And I think that would go at the bottom. Like the top options would be with documentation by default.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I like that. I think this is getting good.
Okay. Okay. Okay, terrific. All right, so now what's next here?
Wait. I was thinking of repeating those options again with the without documentation option.
I don't think it's worth it.
Okay.
Okay, I think submit to repository, I think that's not a good symbol for that. I think that is more, one of those, one of our sort of temple of learning type icons.
We went back and forth on that. Jeremy had a couple other proposals that.
Yeah, one was just kind of a swooshy arrow in, just kind of in there.
Linked on the agenda.
Okay.
I think it's the last link.
I like that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my vote as well.
Okay. Okay, preview notebook. It's not a definition notebook, it's a preview. Function resource. I think it should say function resource / and then the word preview in big letters. Right? Yep. It's not a definition notebook anymore. It's preview of the final thing. And the definitions have been made for this session only is hardly in the title. I mean, that's kind of a subtitle position there, and that's not the right thing for the subtitle.
Yeah,
it would be rather a stripe underneath here. Look, it should say function resource, and then it should say documentation preview. Or should it just say preview? Notebook preview?
Notebook documentation preview is what I might suggest.
How about notebook preview?
Sure.
Look, actually, I just think preview. Function resource, and then like a vertical bar, and then a big preview thing. And the function, yeah, makes sense?
Yep.
Okay, so here, editable version is fine. And then the next one is the deploy function object, the deploy resource function. And then it's the same, pull down.
Drop the very bottom one from the list you had before.
Yeah.
Right. You've already done this.
Yes.
There's no reason you'd ever do that.
Yes. Right, exactly. Contributed by, I don't think the by should be capitalized. Do we really believe that if this is the styling, that that heading should have a period at the end? Find topological boundary, blah, 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 blah.
I don't think it should.
Yeah, I don't
either. In this style, I don't think it should. So we have to change the style guidelines for that.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a question about whether we want this to be repository branded since it's not yet submitted. So like whether we want it to be orange. Because if you cloud deploy it, it'll come up in the different color scheme.
What different color scheme?
The cloud color scheme, black and red, that we use for just the cloud deployed resources.
I would think that that was the right thing for this as well. But we shouldn't orange it up. Well, maybe. Except that the definition notebook was already oranged.
Yeah, it was
right.
Implying that that's exactly where it's headed. It's just a matter of how far do you carry that through.
If we did this in the black and red, we could make the submit button oranged or somehow theme that area of the notebook.
It's just the definition notebook, with that coloration implies that everything's headed towards the repo.
Yeah. I think we can leave this orange. I think orange is the color of the function of function resources, he says. It's orange. This is orange. It's orange all the way.
Yeah. And the main unbranded is, if I've deployed a function and shared it with you, you should know it's my deployed one and not from the central repository. But if it's something like this, then it's, your local documentation. It's less critical to make that difference.
Yeah, it's a preview of the publication, not of the deployment.
Yeah.
Okay, this looks nice. Rest of that looks nice. That looks fine. What is the second one? Is that a warning? No, I think the first one is the right one. I mean, I think, I don't know why we'd get a warning.
Some of them would be warnings because there's not really a reason to stop you from creating the resource, like when you're just making your own. There's some stuff we would want to stop and ask.
Well, okay, so wait a minute. So you need a branch for that, because if you're trying to deploy this in some global way, oh, I see. You don't know if you're deploying globally yet.
Right. So things like it'll ask you to change the name.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid to let somebody deploy something that says my function.
The common case, I think, is you open the sample notebook, you change a few things, and you cloud deploy it. Not my function, but whatever sample content we have. We want them to be able to do that. But
I see.
You know.
All right. Okay. I mean, I would then.
There's also the next.
I would be a
lookup
little
on
bit
the
more insistent
list
on
is
the
a
warning.
different. Okay.
You know, I mean, you might triangularize the warnings, but still keep them in red or something. I don't know. I mean, look, the obvious thing to do would be to have this be, I don't know whether this is too American. No, it's an international thing. To have this be a stop sign, an octagon, and this be a warning sign, a triangle.
If you open up the next mock-up, there's another option for the warning. And I think that's what you've seen in the notebook with the triangle off to the right.
Yeah, you can see it right there in his actual live notebook.
I don't like it.
I like the banner underneath better anyway.
Yeah, I like it significantly better. How does Jeremy feel about both red, one?
I think it's too subtle. I mean, to me, it doesn't really say ones. I mean, maybe you can imply stop sign means more, but I feel like it's too subtle. Like, if you really want a distinction there.
Okay, fine. All right, fine. Then go with what you have. Although, I would say redden up the orange warnings a bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Deployment stripes.
There'll be a decent amount of click to copy going on in here, I think.
What is this here? I don't understand what's going on here.
So when you cloud deploy, you might just want the cloud object, or you might just want to link to the cloud object. They're both.
No, I understand, but it says deployed for this session. Is that just a mock-up fake?
Oh yeah, that's just a mock-up issue. It should say deployed to the cloud.
Okay, fine. So the only thing which bothers me a little bit, Jeremy, is that it's not clear what the grouping of these things is. That this is the payload, so to speak, of that heading.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, if you emphasize this line, you'll be able to get that, right?
It's a bit of the stripiness is making it worse, though. I think there's maybe a different way to treat that. Oh no, because they're both open at the same time. Should we allow both open at once?
What do you mean both open?
Well, you've got two opened at once. You could just only allow one open at a time. Maybe. I haven't seen that in Notebook. We do that on the web.
I don't think we can do that in a notebook. I think the question of whether it opens by default, to hell with it. It's okay. What I would do is just thicken up or darken up that top line.
Okay.
If the
I could make it so one is open at a time if that's what we want.
No, but you can only do it locally. You can't do it in the cloud, and that's not good enough.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, Rick, stop forgetting about the cloud. Okay, you got to think everything you think you're going to do. How is it going to work in the cloud?
Well, I think I could make that work in the cloud too.
It's not worth the trouble. It's really not worth the trouble. It's probably a very annoying feature. It's just not worth the trouble. By the time somebody has 18 deployments, so long as this closes, what does the X do anyway?
Removes the whole stripe.
Okay, and what does this do? And that arrowy thing closes the payload there.
That's right.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you can close the ones above it, fine, but don't make a big production out of it.
Newest on top. I arbitrarily chose.
Newest at the bottom.
You think?
Yeah, I think so. I definitively think so. I think it's bizarre to do anything else.
Okay, I arbitrarily thought at the top, but you're definitive, so we'll go bottom.
I feel definitively it should be at the bottom, yes. And also what I would do is, why don't you left justify this whole thing here? I think it would look better.
Like the drop-down content?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeremy, you want to comment on that?
I agree. And I think the opener could go all the way left too. Like a floating opener seems kind of weird when you might as well stick it to the left of the date.
I think
Yeah.
we could,
Definitely, if it's left justified, you want the opener over there.
What
we
maybe
could drop the day name from the date, make it a little smaller.
Well, and we could put the date on the right side.
Yeah, what do you
That'd be
think about
better.
the date on the right?
I
Yeah.
like that.
Fine. I would leave the full date. You never know when that's, oh yeah, I did that on Monday type thing is useful. Okay. So then the rest of this, the phrase deployed for the session, I assume you can get that from what we just did, yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Deployed
We'll replace it with those, yeah.
for this session, deployed locally on this computer, deployed in my cloud account. Wait a minute. No. Look, deployed for this session. If you store this notebook, it's going to say deployed for this session, which is kind of stupid. See what I'm saying? Because this session is no longer by the time you're looking at that notebook, if it's saved.
Yeah. Temporarily deployed.
I don't know. Temporarily deployed. No, because that suggests it might be even more temporary. Deployed for the duration of the session. How about deployed in the session? Then deployed locally, because it's not necessarily the same thing. It's not necessarily the same computer. You might send somebody this notebook and it's like, oh, it's deployed on this computer. Get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Should I make it something that like grays out when the session changes, or
You are being too cutesy, I think. I mean, it's cool if that's the case. Deployed in the session, deployed.
I'm thinking about how like messages now you can get like the stack trace, but if you just like copy like message cells into new sessions or whatever, it's not going to give you those options automatically.
No, don't worry about it. Maybe those? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you say function resource, and then you give it, and then the date. Seems okay?
That visit web page, that's documentation, right? The label for the, yeah.
Yeah.
We should call it that, I think.
And that is not click to copy. Right,
Yes.
Rick?
Okay.
It's the same URL as the cloud object, but
But
clicking
then
the cloud object will copy the cloud object.
But what is that cloud object?
That's the like the shingle page, and it represents where the resource is deployed. So if you did resource function of that cloud object, it would work. Or you could visit that cloud object in your browser and you'd see the examples.
But that's not true of the local object, right? The local object, does the local object contain the documentation?
Well, we're saying we'll store it there, but I'm not sure how you retrieve it. We don't have a design for that, like using the local object to get the documentation directly. You would have to get the resource object and then ask for the documentation. Whereas the web page, you can just go to it.
Okay, then first point is, I think we should say visit documentation page. Or documentation, visit documentation for that last one. And then maybe we say cloud object and then visit documentation. I think actually visit page might be okay. I don't think we have to say documentation. It's pretty obvious. I think that would be enough to just say cloud object and then say visit. And by the way, that should probably be lowercase o for cloud object. Someone is asking, what if the function comes with custom mathlink or library link code? And the answer is, what is the answer to that for the function repository right now?
I don't think we're supporting it in function repository. I think that's, people have asked about a package repository, which we're saying is.
No, I understand. But that particular thing of being able to support, I think we are going to support that in the end in the function repository for single functions. The problem is there's additional complexity. Okay, so the issue is for a package repository or a Packlet repository, if you just say, oh, here's all this stuff, it's a bunch of functions, it's a bunch of files, and there's some documentation, which is just a bunch of notebooks, that's all fine. But if you want it to be really structured, you'll end up with some system like a more complicated version of this kind of system. If it doesn't matter, if you can have all kinds of things that aren't necessarily documented, all kinds of external programs you run and so on, it's a slightly different thing. But yes, we're working in that direction.
You can do all that stuff with resource functions. Basically, any arbitrary code you want to run, assuming it's something we're not going to reject because it's just dangerous or whatever. But so if you have like create library or whatever, as long as you have all the necessary code packaged as part of the definition that does that, there's no reason why it shouldn't work.
But we're not going to store a library and pass it along with the function.
Right, because
that's what I'm saying. We won't.
You would need the definitions of your code to be cross-platform if you.
I know, but we have a mechanism for that. We've had a mechanism for 30 years for that.
Yeah.
But so the only issue there is it's a multi-file definition, right?
Right.
So that's the only real issue, is we could support this if we could find a way to deal with that multi-file dependency. Right, we could support it even in the function repository, so long as we could deal with the system ID directories.
I think there are further caveats. Maybe we could talk about another time.
Okay. All right. Fine.
Yeah, I've done examples where a resource function can install an entire Packlet with style sheets, whatever.
Oh, really?
It's definitely possible. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. What else is there to figure out here? You've got endless messages, that tooltips and messages and so on.
Yeah, we'll have to sit down and write those. Have you review them another day.
Okay,
and the more info content and the placeholder content and the sample content, there's a ton of content.
Okay. How scary is this?
This is one of yours now.
That's supposed to make me happier.
Well, the one that was in there before was...
Hey, why is that font too large?
Because we're not using DocuTool stuff. We're just using normal... why is it not just text?
Why is that font oversized?
That was my mistake. I can fix that.
Okay.
I added support for up to your function. I hope you don't mind.
That's great. I'm a big fan. Yeah, please do. By the way, the bluing of this function name here is a bit unfortunate, and I think I don't know whether we want to set the style sheet for these things to not do that.
When you generate the preview, that's the point.
Yeah, all right, it'll go away.
Yeah, I think it's super useful in the actual definition notebook.
Okay, well, this is a pretty reasonable definition notebook, I think. Okay. All right, and yeah. And what does submit to repository do?
It gives you a resource submission, or it gives you a success object, assuming that it's filled out properly. There will be, it worked, yeah.
I think ID should be capitalized. Okay, so we
should stop people from submitting the sample content. That won't work. That's a bug. We don't want 100 submissions of position largest.
Well, we should just accept that one, so it'll just be rejected for a duplicate name right away.
Oh yeah, that makes sense too.
That solves the problem.
Okay, but so that's beautiful.
So there's a new workflow for publisher stuff that will be debuting with this as well, where we have these provisional submissions.
Okay, that's nice. But I actually think the submission ID, the best thing to do would be to have a status page for the submission and just give them a URL. And also, I assume you're going to send me email. Am I going to have got email? Oh, yes. How
Yes.
lovely.
Yes.
Magnificent.
So there's one email for the provisional case and one email for the in the queue case. You probably got a second since you already have a publisher ID.
It probably still says data repository too, right?
I think no.
No, it says marketplace admin, which is really weird.
Yeah, that's the email header.
You should call it resourcesystem@wolfram.com.
Yeah, we want to.
Thank you for submitting data to the Wolfram function repository. That's a little bit iffy.
Oh, that's probably an oversight on my part.
Just do a replace all on data to function. I'm
goodness
sure it'll
sake,
work out
come
okay.
on. You've got all kinds of issues in this text. Okay, so oops. For some reason that didn't work. There's something very millennial about starting off with a hello.
Is that good or bad? Don't we want millennials?
I don't know. I don't know.
Millennials.
Maybe.
Howdy.
Yeah, right. That's
Random selection of different greetings.
thank you for submitting.
So that is the
What
provisional
function?
one. That is
Does
the
it say?
provisional. You need to get the provisional work.
Your submission cannot, one word, be reviewed until your Wolfram ID is approved to use a publisher ID.
Right. So you got the provisional message. So you would have to go to that form and fill it out.
Okay. So what I think we should do, by the way, I think let's call it resource team. How about that? Sounds spiffy. Okay.
Yeah. Last time we looked into it, it wasn't trivial to change the from field on cloud emails. But
What do you mean it's not trivial to change it? Come on. That's obviously you should have a login, that's based on that login. You can figure this out. Okay?
Yeah, we can figure it out.
Okay.
I've got a couple ideas.
Okay. So I think what we should do is provide these people with a status page for their submission. Okay? So in addition to the email, rather than a submission ID, what are they going to do with a submission ID? And by the way, also the submission ID absolutely should be in the subject line. It should say,
Okay.
because that way it'll thread properly. Resource submission. Okay, so number, whatever it was. That's what I would do. Okay. All right. I think we should wrap for right now. Bradley, you know how to pick this up from my Dropbox, or should I send it to you?
Yeah, we can grab it.
Okay. All right. Well, gosh, this is complicated.
Well, if we do the complicated parts now, then at least users won't have to sort through the...
Well, quite.
Yeah.
And hopefully this will be really easy for people to start deploying these things. And then once we've debugged this, we can just apply the same things to the other repositories.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, great. I look forward to seeing more of this. Okay,
Bye.
thanks a lot. Thank you to
Thank you.
people on the live stream. See you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.